Welcome to our deep dive into the world of Tadao Ando. He's this self-taught architect who's been kind of like wowing the world with these amazing concrete buildings for decades now. And you're hoping to understand what makes his work so unique. So we're going to really break down his signature style and talk about his influences, and we'll look at a few of his most iconic projects.
Yeah. It is fascinating how Ando, without any formal architectural training, rose to prominence, like you said. And he even won the Pritzker Prize
Yeah.
back in '95. His work, people often describe it as having this haiku effect.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so just like those short, really evocative poems, Ando's architecture sort of distills these complex ideas into really simple but powerful forms.
Okay, so we're talking minimalism, but with depth.
Exactly.
Kind of like a haiku where every word carries so much weight. But before we jump into specific projects, let's rewind a bit. I mean, this guy was a boxer before he was an architect, right? That's quite a career change.
Yeah, Ando's background is definitely anything but conventional. He traveled extensively, just soaking up inspiration from, architectural masters, Le Corbusier, Mies van der Rohe, Frank Lloyd Wright, Louis Kahn.
Wow.
Yeah, he learned through observation, really hands-on experience and just this deep dive into architectural history. It's like he forged his own path by kind of synthesizing all these diverse influences.
Yeah, so he's a self-made architect in the truest sense of the word. And you could really see those influences kind of woven into his work. But it's never just imitation. He's taking those ideas and really making them his own.
Exactly. His approach really embodies what's called critical regionalism. It's this blend of, international architectural ideas, but with this deep respect for Japanese traditions. And you can really see this, in the way he uses simple geometric forms, that emphasis on natural light, and just the way he seamlessly integrates nature into his designs.
Yeah, it's amazing. Let's talk about that signature Ando material, concrete. It seems almost counterintuitive. I mean, it's really heavy industrial material, but he uses it to create these spaces that feel, I don't know, so light, airy, almost spiritual. How does he do that?
Well, Ando actually has this incredible quote where he talks about how architecture becomes the most interesting when it has this double character, as he calls it, being both simple and complex at the same time. And concrete for him really embodies that duality. It's raw, it's strong, but it's also capable of incredible finesse and subtlety in his hands.
Yeah, it's like he's not just pouring concrete into molds, he's actually sculpting with it, like a potter shaping clay.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
And then there's his masterful use of light and shadow. Take the Church of the Light, for example. That single beam of light just slicing through the darkness, illuminating that cross-shaped cutout in the wall. It's like walking into this sacred light box.
The Church of the Light is really a prime example of how Ando kind of elevates concrete beyond just its utilitarian purpose. He uses it to create this incredibly moving spatial experience. And he once said, "Light becomes glorious only when it is lit against the background of the deepest darkness."
Wow.
And that contrast, it's palpable in this space. The darkness actually amplifies the impact of that single beam of light, making it feel almost divine.
And Ando isn't just bringing light in. He's really choreographing it, shaping how we perceive the space.
Yeah.
And it's not just about visual impact either, right? There's this deeper connection to nature at play here.
Oh, absolutely. Ando's architecture it's deeply rooted in the Japanese concept of oku, which is this idea of spatial and spiritual depth that extends beyond the physical boundaries of a building. He brings nature into his designs, not as just decoration, but as an integral element that actually shapes the experience of the space.
Yeah.
Think of the Children's Museum in Hyogo, for instance, where, you have this stepped amphitheater that leads your gaze towards those distant mountains. It's subtle, but it creates this really powerful connection between the built and the natural world.
It's like he's blurring those lines between the building and the landscape,
Right.
suggesting that the building is really just one element within this larger landscape.
Yeah.
Okay, let's dive into some specific projects because
Yeah.
I'm eager to really see these ideas in action. First up, the Azuma House, also known as the Row House. This was an early work of his, right?
Yeah, built in 1976 in Osaka. And it's really a fantastic example of how Ando can transform constraints into this architectural poetry. So imagine this, it's a tiny plot of land squeezed between two existing buildings, like a very classic row house scenario. Most architects, they try to, maximize the available space, but Ando does something totally radical. He divides the house into these three distinct sections separated by these two open-air courtyards.
So instead of expanding outward, he goes inward,
Yeah.
creating these breathing spaces within the structure itself.
Right.
And I'm guessing those courtyards do more than just, let in light and air.
Oh yeah, they're really essential to the experience of the house. These courtyards become these microcosms of nature, bringing the elements, right into the heart of the home. The sound of rain, the changing light throughout the day, even just like the rustling of leaves, all of it becomes part of daily life. And Ando essentially turns what could be this really cramped, dark space into this tranquil oasis.
It's like he's challenging our assumptions about what house can be. It's not just a shelter from the elements, but a space that embraces them, a space that makes you feel connected to nature, even within the confines of a city.
Yeah, and there's also this social dimension to it as well. These courtyards become spaces for interaction, for gathering, for connecting with, family and friends. They kind of foster this sense of community within the home itself.
That's incredible. Okay, next up, we have to talk about the water temple. This one has become like almost mythical in architectural circles.
Yeah, the water temple, also known as Hompukuji, it's completed in 1991. It's really a masterpiece of spatial choreography. The approach itself is like a ritualistic procession. You walk along this winding path enclosed by these towering concrete walls, and it leads you to this really serene lotus pond. And then instead of ascending to enter the temple like you'd expect, you actually descend the staircase that leads you beneath the pond.
Whoa. It's like he's inverting our expectations of what a sacred space should be. You're moving down into the earth almost as if you're entering a tomb or a hidden chamber. What's the experience like once you're inside?
It's this complete sensory shift. You emerge into this cylindrical prayer hall that's bathed in this diffused light that filters down from a skylight above, and the walls they're painted this vibrant red, which further amplifies that feeling of being enveloped, almost womb-like. It's a space that's designed for contemplation, for connecting with something larger than yourself.
Yeah, it sounds like he's really creating a journey, both physical and spiritual. You're moving from the mundane world into this sacred, almost otherworldly space.
And that journey it's crucial to the design. It's not just about the destination, it's about the transition, the way your senses are heightened as you move through these really contrasting spaces. It's a pilgrimage of sorts, a process of leaving the everyday behind and entering this realm of heightened awareness.
Okay, let's switch gears a bit and talk about the church on the water. It was built in 1988 in Hokkaido. And this one seems like a kind of a departure from the enclosed, subterranean feel of the water temple.
Yeah, here Ando, he takes a kind of a different approach to sacred space. Instead of enclosure, he really emphasizes this openness and this profound connection to the natural landscape. The chapel itself is this incredibly simple glass box it's almost invisible against the backdrop of, the surrounding mountains and the vast sky. And then within this transparent volume, he places these 4 massive concrete crosses.
So the crosses themselves become kind of the architectural statement, these stark, powerful forms set against this backdrop of like breathtaking natural beauty.
Yeah, and their arrangement is unconventional too. They're not oriented in the traditional way. They're slightly tilted, almost touching at their extremities, and this really forces you to look outward, to embrace that panoramic view, to experience nature as this kind of manifestation of the divine.
It's like he's saying the whole landscape is the altar here, and that giant glass wall behind the altar, talk about a dramatic backdrop. It's like nature itself becomes the artwork, the focal point of the space.
And the fact that the glass wall can actually be opened up, during the warmer months, further blurs the lines between inside and outside. It literally brings the elements into the space, making you feel completely immersed in nature.
Yeah. I'm sensing a theme here. Ando is fascinated by the way that light and nature can transform our experience of space, whether it's a church, a museum, or even a private home.
Oh, absolutely. He's a master at manipulating those elements to kind of evoke a sense of awe, serenity, and this connection to something larger than ourselves. And he does it all with this deceptively simple material, concrete.
Ando is truly a master of paradox, isn't he? But we have so much more to unpack. Let's take a break here, and we'll come back to explore some more of his iconic projects.
So are you ready to kind of dive back into Ando's world of concrete, light, and nature?
Oh, absolutely. We've been exploring how Ando takes this really, humble material like concrete and just elevates it to an art form. But I'm curious, what happens when he's tasked with designing a museum, a space that's meant to like showcase art itself? How does that work with his style?
Hmm. That's a great question, and it leads us perfectly to the Chichu Art Museum. It's on the island of Noshima. And this project is like it's a fascinating example of how Ando's architecture, it actually becomes inseparable from the art it houses. Instead of building a traditional museum that kind of sits on the land, he carves this one directly into the hillside.
Wow.
He calls it art within the earth. And it creates this incredible dialogue between the concrete structure, the natural light that filters in, and these carefully selected artworks.
So the museum itself becomes part of the landscape, almost disappearing into it.
Yeah.
And the art inside, is it specifically chosen to complement this subterranean setting?
Oh, you got it. The museum houses these site-specific installations by three artists, Claude Monet, James Turrell, and Walter de Maria.
Oh,
Yeah, and each artist is, known for their mastery of light and space, right?
yeah.
And their works here are in constant conversation with Ando's architecture. Like, for example, there's this room dedicated to Monet's Water Lilies series where the natural light just washes over the canvases and it creates this mesmerizing play of reflections and colors.
That sounds incredible. Sounds like a truly immersive experience where the boundaries between, art and architecture, they just kind of dissolve.
Right.
It's like you're not just viewing art, you're actually experiencing it in this carefully orchestrated environment.
And that's precisely what Ando is aiming for. He wants to create these spaces that heighten our awareness, that make us more attuned to like the subtle nuances of light, shadow, and spatial perception. In a way, it's like he's using architecture as a lens through which to view the world, and the art within these spaces becomes this integral part of that experience.
It makes me think of something you mentioned earlier, the concept of oku, that sense of depth and spatial extension. It seems like Ando is playing with that idea, not just in how his buildings relate to the landscape, but also in how the spaces within those buildings unfold.
That's a great observation. Oku isn't just about like physical depth, it's also about a sense of mystery, of things being revealed gradually, of a journey that kind of unfolds over time. And Ando's architecture, it's full of these moments of discovery, where you turn a corner and suddenly a new vista opens up, or a beam of light catches your eye, leading you deeper into the space.
So it's not just about the visual impact. It's about how you actually move through the space, how your perception shifts and changes as you experience these carefully orchestrated sequences. It sounds like Ando is as much a choreographer as he is an architect.
Yeah. That's a great analogy. He's thinking about the movement of the body through space, how light guides the eye, how the different elements of the building come together to create this really holistic experience. He's not just designing buildings, he's crafting experiences.
Yeah. And this brings us to a project that seems to like really embody that idea of a choreographed journey.
Yeah.
The water temple, which we discussed earlier, that descent into the earth, the contrast between darkness and light, the vibrant red of the prayer hall, it's all very deliberate, very theatrical in a way.
The water temple is perhaps like the most literal example of Ando's architectural pilgrimage. You're literally descending into the earth, leaving the mundane world behind, and then you emerge into this sacred, almost otherworldly space. It's a powerful metaphor for spiritual transformation.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit and talk about a project that really showcases Ando's ability to respond to like very specific challenges. The 4x4 house. It was built in 2003 in Kobe. And this one was a direct response to that devastating 1995 earthquake, right?
Exactly. This project was commissioned by a family who had actually lost their home in the earthquake. And they asked Ando to design a house that would offer them this sense of, security and refuge in the face of such profound loss and uncertainty. And the result is it's this incredibly slender concrete tower, just 4 meters by 4 meters in footprint, rising up 4 stories on this really challenging plot overlooking the sea.
Wow. So instead of spreading out, he goes vertical,
Yeah.
maximizing the use of a very limited footprint. And I'm guessing the choice of concrete wasn't just an aesthetic one here.
No, no. Concrete in this context, it really becomes the symbol of strength and resilience. The house is designed to withstand the forces of nature, to offer this sense of protection and permanence in a world that can feel very fragile.
But it's not just a bunker, right? There are these moments of lightness and openness that kind of counterbalance that sense of solidity.
Oh, right. Ando is always very careful to balance those opposing forces. So while the lower levels are very much about enclosure and privacy, the top floor features this glass enclosed living space that offers these panoramic views of the sea and the sky. It's like this beacon of hope, a reminder of the beauty that exists even in the face of adversity.
Yeah, it's fascinating how he takes what could be a very austere, almost forbidding material like concrete and uses it to create spaces that are both strong and delicate, protective, but also open to the world. That double character again, that ability to hold these seemingly contradictory ideas in tension.
And that's what makes his work so compelling. He's constantly pushing the boundaries of what's possible with concrete, exploring its expressive potential, and he's using it to create architecture that is both, you know, deeply rooted in its context and surprisingly universal in its appeal. But it's not just the material itself, it's how he uses it in relation to light, to space, and to that surrounding environment.
Yeah. Ando's work is clearly rooted in Japanese traditions,
Yeah.
but it also transcends cultural boundaries. There's something about his architecture that just speaks to this deeper human need for connection, for beauty, for a sense of belonging in the world.
I think you've hit on something really essential there. Ando's architecture, while deeply personal and reflective of his own cultural background, it also taps into these universal themes that resonate with people from all walks of life. It's about finding harmony between the built and natural worlds, about creating spaces that nurture the human spirit, about using these simple materials to create works of enduring beauty.
Well said. But there's one more project I'd like to discuss before we wrap things up. The Pulitzer Arts Foundation in St. Louis, Missouri. This one marks a kind of departure for Ando in that it's his first major public building in the United States.
Yeah, the Pulitzer Arts Foundation was completed in 2001, and it's a real testament to Ando's ability to adapt his architectural language to different cultural contexts. He takes his signature materials, concrete, glass, and steel, and he uses them to create this really serene, contemplative space that feels both modern and timeless.
And how does he approach the challenge of designing a building specifically for showcasing art?
Well, Ando, he designs the galleries as this series of interconnected volumes that are bathed in natural light that filters in through skylights and these carefully positioned windows. The spaces they're flexible, adaptable, allowing for a variety of exhibition formats. He also incorporates outdoor courtyards and reflecting pools, kind of bringing nature into the heart of the museum.
So even in this urban setting, he finds a way to connect the building to the natural world, to create those moments of tranquility and contemplation that are so characteristic of his work.
Exactly. He's not just creating a container for art. He's creating an environment that enhances our experience of it, that encourages us to slow down, to look closely, to engage with the works on a much deeper level.
This has been an incredibly insightful journey through Ando's architectural world. But as we're nearing the end of our deep dive, I'm curious to hear your final thoughts on what makes his work so enduring, so influential.
Yeah, it does feel like we've only just scratched the surface of Ando's work. I mean, it's incredibly diverse. But as we kind of wrap up our deep dive here, I'm wondering what stands out to you as his most lasting contribution to architecture.
Ando's influence it's really multifaceted. He's definitely expanded our understanding of what's possible with concrete. Transforming this often overlooked material into this medium for expressing lightness, spirituality, this profound connection to nature. But beyond his mastery of materials, I think his most enduring legacy is this ability he has to create spaces that really touch the human soul. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
We've seen it in the projects we've discussed, from that sacred stillness of the Church of the Light to that contemplative journey of the water temple and the resilience embodied in the 4x4 house.
Mhm.
He's not just designing buildings. He's crafting experiences that stay with you long after you've left the space.
Exactly. Ando's architecture, it invites us to slow down, to pay attention to that subtle interplay of light and shadow, to appreciate the beauty of simple forms and to, reconnect with the natural world. His work reminds us that architecture can be more than just shelter. It can be a source of inspiration, a catalyst for personal transformation and this powerful tool for connecting us to something larger than ourselves.
And Endo's work often plays with paradox. You have this heavy concrete that creates this sense of lightness, enclosed spaces that evoke this feeling of expansiveness. Do you think that tension is part of what makes his architecture so compelling?
Oh, absolutely. Endo, he embraces those contradictions, those dualities that exist in the world around us. He doesn't shy away from complexity, but he distills it into these really elegant minimalist forms that invite us to kind of contemplate those deeper layers of meaning.
Yeah, he's not giving us easy answers, is he? He's prompting us to ask questions, to
Yeah.
to engage with the space, to find our own interpretations, and that I think is a hallmark of truly great architecture. It sparks this dialogue. It stays with you. It continues to reveal itself over time.
You've summed it up perfectly. Endo's work it's this gift that keeps on giving. It invites us to return again and again to discover new nuances, new perspectives, new ways of seeing the world.
Well, I know I'll never look at concrete the same way again.
Yeah.
This deep dive has given me a whole new appreciation for Ando's genius and the power of architecture to move us, to inspire us, and to connect us to something beyond, just the everyday.
It's been a real pleasure exploring these ideas with you. And for those of you listening, we encourage you to seek out Ando's work, to experience it firsthand and to discover what resonates with you. His buildings are scattered across the globe, and each one is a unique expression of his architectural vision. So take the time to visit one, walk through its spaces, and just let the light guide your way.
That's beautifully said. And on that note, we want to thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Tadao Ando. We hope you've come away with a newfound appreciation for this remarkable architect and the power of architecture to shape our lives.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.